So let's start, Sam, with the various divisions.
Let's do it.
And we will figure out who's going to win each one. The AFC East, I think that one is a pretty easy one for me. I have no doubt that I feel very comfortable at least saying that it's going to be the Buffalo Bills.
I think it has to be the Buffalo Bills, considering they have the best player, arguably, in the league. I mean, it's not arguable. He was the MVP last year. Year by year, I guess it's arguable, but he's certifiably one of the top 3 best players and most impactful players in the league. They have an excellent offensive line, of which pretty much all of it is back, including 2 excellent tackles. And they have a pretty good pass rusher in Greg Russo. And they're kind of rebuilding that defense a little bit, but they have some consistency that was their weakness last year. It's the one way that they could really, regress as compared to last year. But for the most part, all the pieces are in place for them to have another excellent top of the AFC year. And that comes out to winning the AFC East as well.
Yeah. Who do you think is the biggest threat here? Because the Dolphins were the team that had the best record out of the remaining AFC East teams last year. I have made it known I have a lot of concerns about them going into the year, but maybe they're relative concerns, like the defensive backfield. I think teams are going to be able to throw on this team unless things change dramatically from what we've seen so far in the preseason. Then you've got the Patriots, who a lot of people are much higher on because of the changes that they've made primarily just at the coaching level. And then you've got the Jets, who should look very different offensively speaking at the very least.
So I think there's 3 different paths to the Bills not winning this division. All things considered, no injuries considered, that is. I think number 1 is that the coaching of the Miami Dolphins is just so high level that they're able to persevere through most anything. And if they have a real healthy year from their team, they, for the most part, chose to let Jalen Ramsey and Javon Holland and a lot of these other guys go. That was their own decision. And so with that in consideration, if the coaches have their guys, and we believe in Anthony Weaver and we believe in Mike McDaniel, then that is their path to being super successful this year. The Patriots have a very, very clear path to being very, very good next year, and that is Drake May making the jump. If Drake May makes the jump, it's almost certifiably that this team is going to win 9 or 10 games at least. There's a lot that needs to be done because that offensive line was not very good last year. There's not a ton of weapons in the wide receiver room. There's already injury concerns with Stephon Diggs. And also that defense wasn't very good last year. I think Vrabel will make some changes, but a lot of this rests on Drake May's shoulders. And then the final bit is that the Jets are just the hard scrabble, hard to beat team that the Lions were in the early days of that coaching staff. I think all of those pieces are in place with a lot of defensive talent, basically 2 to 4 all-pros on that defense, including Sauce Gardner, including Quinnen Williams, including the 2 linebackers and Will McDonald, who had an excellent year last year in terms of sack production. There's a lot that could go right for that defense, kind of rest on Justin Fields. I think they're going to put him in a good position to win. So I think this does have kind of a distribution of outcomes. I just don't think any of those distributions are even close to what we expect the Bills to do.
I wonder, too, what's a realistic jump in wins that is actually realistic from one year to the next? Like, they won 5 games last year. So those are some, you make a strong argument as to how a turnaround could happen, but how much of a turnaround from 5-12? They have a win total in Vegas right now of 5.5. I just don't think that it's going to be enough of a turnaround that we're taking out Buffalo this year. Obviously could be wrong, but not willing to predict that. The Patriots have gone from 4 wins last year to their win totals 8.5, which is
seems high,
crazy high to me, that you're predicting that they're going to more than double their win total this season. And so, again, even if it's Patriots and they look way better, I still don't know if I feel comfortable even taking that over under those circumstances. So I definitely don't feel comfortable suggesting that they're going to knock off the Bills. So that one, I think, is a fairly easy division in terms of just predicting a winner. Let's do the AFC North, which for me is similarly easy.
It's definitely similarly easy, and I think the Ravens are in the exact same position as the Buffalo Bills, except they had, by the end of last year, one of, if not the best defense in the league. and they have bolstered that through the draft, adding Mike Green and Malachi Starks with premium picks. I think that this is a defense that is settled to be a top 5 defense in the league, and this is an offense which has, again, the best player in the league if you're looking at the all-pro team at the helm playing quarterback. I think they are the most complete team in the National Football League for the most part, and I think this should be the Ravens' year, and I think that starts with an AFC North victory.
Yeah, I think they're in the conversation for who wins the Super Bowl, which we'll get to later. For that reason alone, I think you have to feel pretty comfortable taking them as the division winner. But also, the Bengals defense was not good last year, even though the offense was insane. And so I am not convinced that they got a whole lot better this offseason on that side of the ball. Defensively, they're in Cincinnati. The Steelers, I personally didn't love the entire offseason, frankly. I know a lot of other people feel differently. But those two teams, the Bengals and the Steelers, outscored their opponents last year by 38 and 33 points, respectively. The Ravens outscored their opponents by 157. We're not even talking about a similar ballpark of competence at this point in time. So for me, that's an easy Ravens victory. And then the Bengals and Steelers are fighting to be relevant and in the playoffs, as far as I'm concerned. What about the AFC West, which to me is the best division in the AFC? I'm curious to see if you agree with that.
I think the AFC West is the division that on paper is strongest, but if a couple things go wrong, it could end up being a weak division. I still think the Chiefs are just built to win. You have an excellent quarterback. You have made some moves across the offensive line, which seemed to struggle last year. But for the most part, all of the characters are still there. You still have Chris Jones. You still have Trent McDuffie. You have stars at pretty much all 3 levels on defense. And you have excellent coaching. I think it's just difficult to bet against that after seeing it for more than half a decade at this point. But the Broncos, if anyone can do it, it's the Broncos. The only weakness of the Broncos team is really the skill positions and the quarterback position, which is very rare in this league to say that everyone else at pretty much every single other position group could potentially have an all-pro for the Broncos. That's the defensive tackle group, the edge group, the linebacker group, the safety group, the cornerback group, the left tackle, right tackle, guard. Like literally every single element of this team is built to win. And given you have a good head coach in Sean Payton, I expect them to bump over their win total for last year, maybe get in that 12 to 13 win group, and that should try for the division. So while I think the Chiefs still take it, I think the Broncos look great, and it's tough to bet against Justin Herbert and Jim Harbaugh as well. And that's not even considering that they've added another excellent coach in Pete Carroll and another well-respected quarterback in Geno Smith and the Raiders.
Yeah, I think you're talking about the Broncos as the clear-cut team there to challenge the Chiefs in this division. I don't think you can write the Chargers out of that conversation.
Definitely not.
And I think the Broncos and the Chargers are kind of neck and neck. And that's why I think that this is the best division in the AFC, because I agree with you that the Chiefs take the division. But I think that the Broncos and the Chargers are both highly, highly competent and teams that could seemingly really kind of start clicking this season. These are 3 of the top 4 teams in scoring defense in the entire league last year were in this division. The Chargers were number 1 in that category, not the Broncos. Now, I know the Broncos made some sexy moves this offseason in the draft, in particular on the defensive side, but we saw the Chargers preseason. One of the things that I took away from the games that I saw was I love their depth on defense. Like, they had playmakers everywhere, and those weren't their starters that were even doing that. They allowed 17.7 points per game last year. I feel like that kind of flew a little bit under the radar. People talk about Justin Herbert as being a linchpin to this team. If they can really get his chemistry with some of his weapons, it really comes down to the pass catchers for me. And they just don't have anybody that truly blows me away in that department. I mean, Ladd McConkey obviously came on really strong last year and is very, very good. But I'd love to see a clear-cut number 2 and number 3 that I could count on. And even a tight end, right? So like the move that they made with the rookie running back and then Najee in terms of depth, if he's okay to go. But I think if you're building on that defense and things click with the offense, then I kind of think it's anyone's game in terms of the Chargers Broncos trying to take down the Chiefs. By the way, I mentioned the 3 defenses. Broncos were 3rd in scoring defense last year, allowing 18.3 points per game, and the Chiefs were 4th, 19.2. The other team in that mix at number 2 was the Eagles. So, and like you said, that's not even talking about the Raiders, though I think that the Raiders will be better than they were last year. I think they will stabilize this season. I don't think they're in the conversation to win the division at all. I think maybe best case scenario, they're like fighting for a playoff berth at the end of the year. And I am not writing them off for that. But I think for purposes of what we're talking about here, they're not necessarily in the conversation.
Yeah, I think there's going to be 2 real highlights of whether the Broncos and the Chargers can really compete in this division. And I think for the Chargers, it's much more descriptive, but I think the quality of their offense will be shown by this. If you're starting to see their rushing EPA per play jump into like the top 10, top 7, top 5, that's an indicator that their offensive line, despite losing Rashawn Slater, is probably pretty stable, and that the addition of those 2 running backs may have added at least some explosivity to that offense that we did not see last year. Now, that could also be a signal that Ladd McConkey and Quinn Johnson and the rookie pass catchers that are also there could be opening it up for them. It's not necessarily because of the running backs. I think it's just a good signal through weeks 1, 2, 3, and 4 that offense may be better and may be able to challenge a team like the Chiefs. On the flip side, it's very similar for the Broncos, but in the pass game. If we start seeing their EPA per pass get above average and we start seeing a lot of good metrics on Bo Nix, which despite, him getting votes as someone who may be able to restart a franchise in the Athletic poll, which I think that may have been Sean Payton who voted for him, which, kudos for loyalty. But nonetheless, his metrics were not super great last year, except for avoiding negative plays. If we start to see him not only avoid negative plays, but make positive plays, despite losing a guy like Devon Vele, or maybe adding some more snaps for Marvin Mims or additional people in the backfield, I think that's a real sign that offense is something in advance of what it was last year and can match that defense, and thus they can win some more games.
Yeah, those are all really good points. I wanted to say, as you were talking, that they started the year off really good on the ground. J.K. Dobbins was really good, obviously, for like a hot minute there. But in terms of their EPA per rush, those numbers weren't as high as I expected. When I go back and I look at just a week by week, in week 1, they ranked 13th in that category. Week 2, they were 18th. And then in week 3, they fell much farther down the list. So, yeah, I think that's a really interesting shout out. And I think Rashawn Slater I agree. Like, I want to see how the O-line can perform when you lift that massively important piece out of the mix. AFC South. AFC South.
When you look at the AFC South, you're shocked by the win totals, Lindsay, because like a lot of these are high.
Very shocked.
I mean, the Texans, obviously the Texans, they have a lot of talent, but like the Colts, Lindsay, the Jaguars, I mean, like, it's a really strange division.
So this division, I went and looked at scoring differentials from last year just to refresh, because I think that one actually is a pretty, like, if you're looking for which teams are good, that's an easy way. Just go keep track of scoring differential throughout the season. Sometimes it doesn't track with the wins, losses, but like if you are consistently outscoring your opponents, then that's a sign that you're at least in games, all of that kind of good stuff. Okay, this division was not good in that category at all. The Texans, who were the division's representative in the playoffs, won 10 games, which is wild considering how bad that offense was. Their scoring differential on the season, would you care to take a guess? And I will, for context, tell you this. Also in the AFC, Ravens plus 157, Browns minus 177. So that's kind of your range. What do you think the Texans came in at?
Especially given some of those games, like I remember the Christmas Day game against the Ravens, they got murdered. So what was it, like 20?
0.
Wow.
The division winner had a scoring differential on the season of Zero.
That's
Every other
crazy.
team, by the way, this one wasn't. There are some instances where teams kind of flipped and the scoring differential is different than the order in which they finished. This was not that case. That was the best one in the division. Every single other team had a negative scoring differential. The Colts -50, the Jags -115, and the Titans -117. Not a single team in this division outscored their opponents cumulatively on the season.
So what, Lindsay, you're describing right now is the thing that the nerds like to call the Pythagorean win total, which is the idea that you can, using a complex set of exponents which are optimized using the differential, you can get to a better idea of how good a team actually is. And if we're using that, which once again, it is a little bit more stable than actual wins and losses. We've seen this with the Vikings year after year. And when the Vikings decide to move on from Mike Zimmer and go to Kevin O'Connell, the Pythagorean win total was something that a lot of people brought up for Mike Zimmer's career coaching the Vikings. This is not a good outlook for this division. As a result, I think the Texans are going to win it. They have the best defense. They have one of the best defenses in the league, and they probably have the best unit out of this entire division. I think what I'm really interested in is the Jaguars. I think, you bring in a new coach to shake it up. Doug Peterson obviously kind of trailed off as the season went last year. Trevor Lawrence had some injuries, but Brian Thomas Jr. was a really bright spot. They had a top-tier talent in Travis Hunter, who, Lindsay, I feel like as the preseason has kind of gone on, and maybe it's just because he is supposed to play both ways, so his fantasy value is a little knocked. We haven't really talked about that Travis Hunter was one of the best wide receivers in the NCAA last year.
Totally agree.
They've added that as well. And so if that offense can start to get stuff together, all of a sudden you match that up with two excellent pass rushers in Josh Hines-Allen and Travon Walker, and that seems to be a recipe for at least a little bit of success.
Yeah, I've got the Jaguars coming in second here, the Titans in third, and the Colts in fourth, which is not necessarily consistent with what the Colts did last year. I should probably be higher on them, but I'm not.
I think it's difficult to figure out what the Colts will do in any given year because their strength is up front, and moreover, their strength is on the interior of the front. So you're talking about Quentin Nelson, you're talking about Grover Stewart, DeForest Buckner, and it's just difficult to identify. Number one, those are fairly stable positions. Obviously, the offensive line's hard to gauge, but those guys are, very deep into their career at this point. And also, when you don't have a quarterback, when you're starting Daniel Jones, a lot of question marks start arising.
Also, yes, this is a lot of this stems from the quarterback situation here, but you're talking about the guys on the line. How about their skill position players? You have Jonathan Taylor in the backfield. You've got Josh Downs, who we both like very much. Like in terms of advanced data, there's a lot of arrows pointing to, hey, this guy's actually very good. Michael Pittman, I think, is also good and just sort of like in no man's land because the passing offense anyways, is so unpredictable about what it's going to look like. Like last year, it looked very different in terms of the two quarterbacks that they went back and forth with. They were just stylistically so different. They targeted different areas of the field. Like it just kind of, the whole thing is just so up in the air. So let's say Daniel Jones is the best version of Daniel Jones. This is the guy that the Giants gave a second contract to, right? Like if he's able to duplicate that for whatever reason, which is not what I'm betting on, obviously, picking them to finish last, then we're having a totally different conversation. I just, I'm not confident making that prediction.
It's very interesting because as you were talking about that, I started to think, okay, well, like we talk about these levels of success and we've talked about the Broncos like this. And so I was like, what did their defense actually look like last year? In terms of EPA per play, they were above average. And in terms of success rate defensively, they were ninth. So if they're able to keep that up, and we've talked about how we kind of like their skill position players and their offensive line, it really comes down to just the quarterback position. So now all of a sudden I'm starting to think maybe I do like the Colts. Like
moving them up.
This is really kind of shocking me. Maybe I do have them more around like 7-8 wins, I guess. Again, like it's just a weird team. And given that all the hoopla is about the quarterback position, it is easy to get wrapped up in that. The problem is their two quarterbacks right now are the two quarterbacks who have sunk their entire teams. Daniel Jones, who sunk Saquon Barkley, Malik Neighbors, an excellent defensive front at the Giants, and Anthony Richardson, who hasn't been able to get over the hump for that Colts team in the last 2 years.
I didn't even mention Tyler Warren. I love, by the way, that my reasons for why they were going to finish last is exactly what turned you around.
Yeah, I mean, it was
they
like,
might be better.
I was like, dang, wait, these are a bunch of good points about why they could be good.
Oh boy. But then you've got the Titans who,
Right.
like, if Cam is good and, proves to be worthy of the number 1 overall pick, then things change dramatically there also. I mean, the whole division just feels so fluid and unpredictable,
Right.
Top to bottom. I do think that the Texans, like, not to belabor this point, but I do think that there is an element potentially of, and I hate the way that this sounds, but addition by subtraction with regards to the offensive coordinator, because there was a lot last year that felt like it just didn't make sense of like how it was all operationally working. And there was certainly a lot of like, how did this happen to CJ Stroud? Like, where did the guy from the year before go? Like, what are we looking at here? And for all the reasons that we were kind of excited about them going into the year last year, I think those should still remain. It's just that we have such a sour taste in our mouth from last season in the offense, but I think they could flip it. I think that they have the pieces. The fact that we were excited about those pieces going into the year last year, I think there's certainly an argument to be made that they could, and that they were able to win 10 games because they're still in this division. They're going to play these other teams that we're talking about that we don't necessarily love. They're going to play them each twice. Okay, so that's the AFC. Let's move over to the NFC and start with the East here. On the one hand, you could say that this one's easy because the Eagles are clearly a class above just about everybody. I was looking, by the way, at Super Bowl odds, and in terms of like both participants, and the Ravens, the lowest odds for the Ravens were when they're facing the Eagles. Ravens-Eagles is the lowest odds for the Ravens. At Bills-Eagles, lowest odds for the Bills. Chiefs-Eagles, lowest odds for the Chiefs. There are a lot of signs pointing to everyone thinks that the representative out of the NFC is going to be Philadelphia. So it's hard to pick against them, but I do like the Commanders here.
I think that this has an argument to be the best division in the NFL next year.
Ooh.
And I think the reasons why are you have an excellent team. I mean, all around, like you could just pick a position with the Eagles, and then you have an excellent quarterback in Jaden Daniels, who obviously we were talking about CJ Stroud could have the sophomore slump, but they seem to have a good, aggressive head coach who's going to get the most out of his players. The question is really the defense of can they keep up? They weren't really able to keep up last year, and it didn't really make a difference. But they've done pretty much everything to put the pieces in place to take advantage of Jaden Daniels. And then you look at the Cowboys, they trade Micah Parsons, but I think that George Pickens is going to be a real breakout level player this year. And I think, he was a semi-quality wide receiver 1. I think we're going to talk about him in the same way that we talk about T. Higgins, in the way that we talk about Devontae Smith this year. And I wonder if they're just Bengals South. And then, I'm a little bit of a homer. Producer Stopsky does love the Giants, but everything kind of makes sense of what the Giants did this year. It seems to be a progression and a plan to win more games. And so I just think these are going to be really competitive teams. And sans the Commanders and the Cowboys, you have 2 excellent defenses, 2 excellent offenses. And I think that is a good brew to give people in other divisions trouble, much less each other.
I think I disagree with you about the Cowboys. I don't know that I see them being good at all. And I do agree with you that the offense could be Bengals South. I also just don't know if they are actually, like, the Bengals offense with a bad defense has Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, right? Like, I do not feel comfortable putting Dak Prescott, even with CD. Like, so let's say CD is same as Jamar Chase, just can't do the rest of it. But I think the point that you're making is valid, that they could just be throwing it all over the yard. I don't like their backfield. I don't like the running back options. I don't like the moves that they made to purposefully put Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders in the backfield. I don't know. And then obviously the trade of Michael Parsons, as we talked about last week, when that was breaking news and we did an episode on that. I just think that the defense is going to be not great. And so I do think that from a fantasy standpoint, I think Dak got a boost, mentally from me. I think they're going to be throwing a lot because I think they're going to be down.
Right.
But I think that is sort of related to the fact that I don't think that they're going to be up and winning. Yeah. Their opponents last year scored 22 more touchdowns than they did. The only team whose touchdown differential was worse than the Dallas Cowboys was the Cleveland Browns at -24. The Titans was the same.
Yeah, it's a tough go of it, and especially considering if you think that Michael Parsons was truly like a point to a 2-point difference in any given game he was not playing in, it starts to become a rough outlook for this Cowboys defense. They seem to believe that was the way to go. I am worried that this team is going to be 25th or lower in EPA per play allowed.
Sam, they got to stop the run.
Yeah.
I mean, you heard the press conference.
They do have to stop the run. That is true. They were terrible stopping the run last year. I just don't know what trading your best player.
Tell me real quick,
for that.
Which game script situation leads to a team running against you?
Getting beat, but also just efficiency-wise, they were not good. So it's pick your poison. They may have been getting beat really badly, and then they also may have just sucked at stopping the run. There were both of those things last year. So it's either way, pick your poison. They did need to stop the run. I just don't know what trading Michael Parsons does to help stopping the run.
Well, I mean, just the prioritization of stopping the run over stopping the pass. Anyway, that's a conversation we've had too many times. Okay. I think it's the Eagles. I think it's the Commanders. And then I have the Giants coming in third here. I'm not with you in your optimism about the division. I think it's probably still two teams. I think it's Eagles, Commanders. My apologies to Matt Stofsky, our producer who we love, who's excited especially about the Giants defense. I don't know if I'm willing to put them over the hump and put them in a conversation where I'm super excited about them, especially when there are the teams that exist in the NFC North. If you want to talk about the best divisions in the NFC and probably the entire NFL, I think the NFC North is just sitting right there staring you in the face with the Lions and the Packers and the Vikings, and all of which were top 10 in offensive yards per play last year and top 7 in EPA per play allowed on defense. You have an argument to make for 3 of the teams in this division having been among the best offenses in the league last year while also being among the best defenses in the league this year. And by the way, the Lions, we talked about scoring differential, outscored their opponents by 222 points last year. And the next closest was Philadelphia at 160. That is an insane disparity that obviously didn't lead to the Lions winning the Super Bowl or anything like that. But in terms of, we talk about process over results, the process in Detroit was to crush opponents. That was what they built last year. And there are certainly valid questions as to how much losing their coordinators will impact that. But let's say it does impact that. How much farther down are we going? Because you've got a lot of wiggle room before you get non-competitive there.
I think that the Lions are certifiably going to continue their march to success, notably because if you even want to narrow it down to a single sample size of the game against the Commanders that they lost in the playoffs, they were still scoring every time down the field as long as Jared Goff was not throwing a pick. They were still scoring a ton of points. And I just don't see how that will stop, given that they've only added to their quiver there. I mean, Isaac Tisla, say what you will about reaching up and making the pick, but they're still trying to bolster the offense. I don't know how it's going to turn out. He looked good in the preseason, but nonetheless, there's just more on the offense. Like, you get David Montgomery healthy, you get the offensive line still having two excellent tackles. Obviously, you lose Zeitler and Ragnow, but you replace them with two guys, young guys that you believe in. And so I think the offense is probably going to be stable. And then we're talking about Micah Parsons. If Aiden Hutchinson is 75% of what he was last year, which was 9 sacks and like 3 games, then that's already, you're talking about a guy who's a Pro Bowler. And I think that people are really underestimating the impact that adding that level of pass rusher back to your defense can have, regardless of the secondary questions at the cornerback position. Even though, they add DJ Reed, they still have the excellent safeties. They're bringing back health at the linebacker position. I love the Lions at the top of the division, but I think the Packers are just really, really good. Like, I think the Packers are the 2 in this division. I don't know if I believe in the Vikings with a rookie quarterback. I think you got to slot them in once again as an average EPA per play offense, which is such a weird thing to say given how we look at Kevin O'Connell, but that's just been the reality of that offense since he's been there. And then the Bears are a big question mark as well. I think this is kind of a 2-team division, Lindsay. It's kind of the opposite of your thoughts about the East. I think it's like the North is the real 2-team division. I think it's the Packers. And I thought this before they added Micah Parsons. Now I definitely think it is as they add Micah Parsons. And I think it's the Lions because I'm just not ready to trust these young quarterbacks on the other 2 teams.
Yeah. I think that where I would push back about your take on the Vikings is that they took a historically below average quarterback.
Good point.
Plugged that guy into their offense last year. And so let's say JJ McCarthy isn't everything that they hope that he will be. Like, where is the bar of competence that is required for you to win some games in this environment? And I don't know that the answer is that it's incredibly high. Like, I think he could underwhelm us and still actually have some success in this offense this year.
It's a great point. And the data scientists at SumerSports have there's a thing called super forecasters, which is you try to predict probabilities of stuff. And the probability that KOC goes over what we've seen EPA per play ranking amongst that group of people, everyone thinks they're going to go over. So I do kind of have to agree with your sentiment there. It's just an interesting subset given, a lot of those games were pretty close that they won. Down the stretch, it fell completely apart. We're hoping for a healthy year from Brian O'Neill and from Christian Darrisaw, but that was when the wheels really fell off. They haven't been able to put together a good rushing offense, and sans Jordan Mason, who projects to be the backup, haven't really made any updates to that. They did reinvest in the interior offensive line, particularly picking up 2 guys from those Colts that we talked about. But also, I didn't really love their back end the entirety of last year. It ends up getting lit up at the end of the season. They kept pretty much all of those guys. I just wonder if regression is in order for the Vikings as a team, as a whole, coming off of a really excellent but somewhat lucky 13-win season.
It's entirely possible. And then you've got the Bears.
Who
we both are putting...
Mark.
We're both putting in the 4th spot, but could be competitive this year. They absolutely could be different because I think you could point to a lot of different defensive stats that would suggest that they have the pieces and that they weren't bad on defense. They were in some bad situations, which obviously leads to some of those numbers going down. The fact that they're on defense so frequently because the offense was terrible. But I also, think the Ben Johnson effect and just the simple, and I know that everybody's had these conversations about Caleb Williams and the lack of attention that he had or, hand-holding with regards to how to watch film and all that kind of stuff. One would assume that, especially now that that's been made very public, that there's a bunch of people in there helping him in that way, and that's something that Ben Johnson has addressed. I wouldn't be surprised if this offense didn't look immeasurably better this year. And if that is the case, then I think that they have the defensive pieces to actually make them competitive right away. So I'm not willing to move them over any of those other teams, but just to back up my point that I think that this is a division that could have a lot of depth. There is another division out west that I think also has depth, but it's different depth because I think they're lacking that high end team that we're yes, absolutely, this is a contender. but it feels very even to me in the sense that I think that this division is the toughest to call and could go in a bunch of different directions. And I think I'm struggling with whether or not to put the Rams or the Niners at the top. And I kind of go back and forth depending on what day it is. I'll probably go Rams. I'll go Rams for purposes of this conversation because I just think that they have a good structure in place. They are consistent. The Niners were expecting a massive bounce back from last year, and I think that there's certainly a path for that to happen. I think the Rams feels a little bit more stable, and in terms of risk aversion, that's probably where I feel most comfortable pushing my chips in. But I think the Cardinals and the Seahawks, you could make an argument for them flying under the radar right now.
I think there's a clear path for all four teams to win this division, which I think truly this is the only division in the entire National Football League where that is the case. I think if you look at the San Francisco 49ers, it's clear. Health, Brock Purdy continues playing well, probably even progresses, and is able to pick up some of the slack of an aging McCaffrey or an aging Kittle or an aging Trent Williams. And then those guys stay relatively healthy, maybe play between 10 and 12 games, and they're able to figure it out. It's kind of the same play for the Rams. I think there's a little bit more uncertainty with Matt Stafford than there is with Brock Purdy, which is crazy to say. I think the average Matt Stafford game is probably still better than the average Brock Purdy game. I just think there's a chance he doesn't play a lot of games this year. And I think, as always, there's a chance with Puka Nacua. And I think if those two guys go out, the Rams are kind of in a world of hurt, despite the advances they made on their defensive front last year. I think the Seahawks have a chance, as Sean Syed has outlaid on this podcast, to have one of the best defenses in the league. I just have no idea if that offense will be any good. A lot of moving parts, new quarterback, new offensive coordinator, probably going to run the ball a lot. Does that mean a lot of close games? Maybe. Does that mean a lot of close games don't go their way? Maybe also. Then you look at the Cardinals, one of the best offenses in the league last year, just got to have it matched on the defensive side of the ball. I don't know if they can do that, but if they do, potentially they could win. I think the first team to 10 wins here wins the division. I think that may happen like week 13 or 14. But nonetheless, I think any of them could potentially be 10-win teams. And I really think any of them are not going to be bad. Like, I don't think we have any 2, 3, 4-win teams in this division by any means.
Yeah. To your point about the Seahawks, they won 10 games last year. 10. And they're kind of a little bit like, we've had this conversation about Mike Tomlin and the Steelers being good enough, but never actually contenders. Michael Sean Dugar, who covers the Seahawks for The Athletic, actually described them as competitors, but not contenders, the Seahawks, that they've been like mired in that type of a range for a while now. And I think that that's probably a great way to describe them. They are always competitive. They are never a team that you're actually talking about as a team that's going to go all the way or even in that conversation. And I think that that's true again this year. This will be a year for them to potentially change that narrative, take steps forward, or try to anyway. But I guess the point that I'm starting off with there is that they won 10 games, and where we are, and then you have Sean Syed coming on the show saying that they might be the best defense in the NFL this year. And so where we're expecting this regression is attached to the offensive moves. And I don't know that the offensive moves nerfed this team. I think that, to your point about the Dolphins coaches identifying what they want their defensive backfield to look like and saying, okay, if we assume that they're good coaches and they know what they're doing and they made these moves on purpose, then maybe benefit of the doubt, that's the path to this being different than, what we're describing as potentially bad. Same is true for the Seahawks. They specifically identified DK by Lockett by they made these moves on purpose. They didn't lose these people. It wasn't like, oh, crap, we tried so hard and we just weren't able to hold on to them. And what are we going to do now? They made moves on purpose. And so is replacing Geno Smith with Sam Darnold, who is a flawed quarterback potentially, but certainly just proved last year that you can win with him in Minnesota. Is that such a downgrade? I don't know. I don't know that it's a massive downgrade. They went out and they made specific choices with regards to the rest of the offense, I think they're going to run the ball a lot, or at least try to. I think that, going from a 10-win team to making choices on purpose to specifically, one would imagine because their defense was already good, make the offense better, for us to assume that those choices made them actually worse feels like a weird, illogical leap.
I think it comes from a fear that they just went to the opposite of what worked or what didn't, in quotes, work last year. Because last year they had an immensely high pass rate over expected. It was a wide open offense. And Geno was trusted to basically do whatever he wanted to do. Didn't necessarily work out. It worked out to the tune of 10 wins, but it really put the offensive line in a tough situation. The offensive line that most people don't truly believe in. And now it seems like what they're doing is the exact opposite. They're trying to bring on a scheme that is kind of offensive line independent. They're probably going to be the lowest pass rate over expected team in the league. But the true variance here is the rookies. And I think this is the one team where if any one of the rookies stands out, particularly in the passing game, it's going to make a massive, massive difference. Whether that is Zabel on the front in regards to the running game and in the passing game, whether that's Torrey Horton, whether that's Elijah Arroyo, whether that's even some guy like Ricky White all the way down the stretch. Like any of those guys, if you can start cobbling together a lot of production from those rookies, I think that is a true jump from a competitor to a contender, even though I struggle to say that a team led by Sam Darnold at this point in his career can truly be a contender. That would be how they move to that level.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily ready to project them as being a contender this year, but I think they will at the very least continue to be a competitor. And so that, raises the bar of, I think if they were to win the division, that would probably tell a story of something having gone wrong in LA or San Francisco, and the Seahawks maybe outplaying our expectations. But I think that something has to go wrong in one of those two cities in order for the Seahawks to win this. All of this said, again, I'm going to put you on the spot here and have you guess which of these four teams led this division in scoring differential last year.
I guess I'm going to say the Rams because they didn't take any massive losses to my knowledge.
They were third.
Were the Cardinals number one?
Cardinals were number one at plus 21.
That makes sense.
Nothing crazy, sexy, or anything like that. But Cardinals number one plus 21. Seahawks number two plus 7. Rams minus 19. Niners minus 47.
And the Cardinals won eight games?
What was that? That feels right to me. Hold, please. Let me find that quickly. Cardinals 8-9.
Right. So that's a little now plus 21 is like the 8 to 9 win range, so nothing crazy there. That is some signal that perhaps we are overlooking the Cardinals, as many do.
They and yet as we have continually made the argument for independent pieces on this Arizona team maybe flying under the radar, I still am not yet at a point where I'm really passionate about the sum of those parts exceeding expectations. I think it's probably as likely that they finish 8-9 or in that range. That's probably where I feel most comfortable making my prediction about the Cardinals this year. But I can describe a path where it's more than that. And I can also describe a path where it's less than that. But they're an interesting kind of good enough team. But also, if we're talking about the Cardinals and Seahawks being the floor for this division, that also, I think, is a pretty good statement about the strength of the division in general, right? Because those are not low floors. We're not expecting the floor to completely bottom out for the Cardinals or the Seahawks this year, especially when you've got the NFC South right there with maybe the lowest floor of all this season. What's going on in your city? Who do we like there in the NFC South?
The NFC South is I'm more certain that there's going to be competitors than in the NFC West, but for different reasons. I think you got to look at the Bucs as the most talented, most experienced, and most likely to win this division. I am a little worried about Tristan Wirfs missing some time. I don't like losing the best left tackle in the league, really. That's not something that you like to do. But they've just built for depth. And moreover, they built like a team who is winning 6 and 7 games a year rather than a team who has made the playoffs twice in a row now. And I think that is the correct way to approach it, given that division. I think you just have so much depth at the wide receiver position. Jalen McMillan will come back and end up being like a third or fourth wide receiver on this team, I guess, or second wide receiver. Who knows? You have 2 running backs that you trust. You have 2 tackles. And then you have young and upcoming pass rushers across the defense, and Kalijah Cansey, Yaya Diaby, Vita Vea, the multiple-time Pro Bowler. And you just got to cobble together the defensive backfield, and you have a pretty solid team. And I think this team probably projects to win right around 10, 11 games as they've won, and potentially could go over if Baker has a really, really good season.
Yeah, for me, I think I'm higher on the Bucs this year than a lot of other people are who are expecting various forms of regression. But I really like the way that they approach the draft, and sort of like the Broncos did on the defensive side of the ball. They said, let's keep a strength. Like, let's make sure that this is always a strength. We're going to have so much depth. We are going to be the best in the league. And I kind of think that that's what the Bucs did with their wide receiver room, adding Emeka Egbuka. And then unfortunately, they actually need him early on with all of the injuries there to Chris Godwin and Jalen McMillan. But like you said, at some point, Chris Godwin comes back. And Jalen McMillan, and then you've got so many weapons. I mean, Cade Otton, who has also been a pretty good tight end. I mean, nothing incredible in the Brock Bowers tier or anything like that, but somebody that you can certainly throw to or put on the field. He's a competent tight end who just is not going to get the target share that some of these other guys get because there's so many mouths to feed in the passing game. But I like them a lot more than the other teams, and I like them more, I think, than other people do. The Panthers and Falcons are an interesting like mid-tier for me within this division, where I'm just not sure. I'm like arrow pointing up on both teams. I'm just not sure how high up the arrow is going this year, because you've got the Panthers, who, again, I told you I've been citing scoring differential. Like, I mean, it was terrible last year, but then it was so also out of whack with like, this was a team that looked very different for the first half of the season and the second half of the season. So you almost throw all stats from last year out the window and just go, okay, they got better. They got better at the end of the year in a bunch of different ways. And then did they get better in the offseason to add to that? You just want to establish some momentum. And I feel like the momentum in Carolina is good. I feel optimistic about them.
I was way too early on the Panthers last year, and I'm diving deep again. But I feel like if you were really to kind of ground it and bring it down to brass tacks, this is fairly reminiscent, maybe not to the same degree of star power, but to the progression of the Lions when, they had a tough year, didn't win a lot of games. But by the end, they were really hanging in there with really good teams. Everyone felt good about them. The next year, they win like 7, 8, 9 games. They're really putting teams to the test, but one thing or the other doesn't go exactly correct, and they're a step out of the playoffs. And I think that's probably the most realistic place where the Panthers are this year, which is, around that 8-9 win team. You start seeing some great progression from the young pass rushers, Nick Scorton and Princely Umanmielen, that they drafted this year. You start seeing veteran play from Bryce Young, and the wide receivers start to kind of cobble themselves together. I don't know if it's all there yet, but the pieces are definitely there. They just may be a year away from competing. I really like what they've done. I hope it all comes together this year and they end up winning this division, just because of the consistency from the team building perspective and from the coaching perspective. I just think that when you're dealing with 21 and 22-year-olds, it's a little difficult to get a high level of consistency, particularly when you're having to face teams that do have a lot of veteran players. And the Saints, for better or worse, are a team like that. The Falcons are a team like that. And now the Bucs are a team like that as well.
If you had to predict a team in the NFL that was sub 500 last year that is going to be above 500 this year,
right?
Who would you feel most comfortable going with?
I think there's a lot of teams and there's a lot of explanations, but I'm going to go with the one that I'm the least confident in, but I like the most, and I think it's the best discussion. And we mentioned it a little earlier. I think it's the Giants. Like, they solved the problems that kept them from being the team they were when they made the playoffs. Now, the offensive line is still pretty shaky, but I think that you add in not one, not two, and potentially not even three quarterbacks into that room who can kind of get that offensive line together, be a leader as a quarterback. We have seen Russ take sacks. We've seen Jameis turn the ball over. We don't know what we have with Jackson Dart yet. I doubt he'll play this year. But when you have that many options at a position that killed you last year, you have a superstar at wide receiver, and then you have an excellent front seven that last year was extremely good at sack rate. I think that the pieces are there for them to at least crack into the 7-8 win 9 win zone. And I think that's the one that I'm not super confident in, but I really think there's value given that their win total is 5.5. It feels like they can win more than 5.5 games, Lindsay.
I agree that they could win more than 5.5 games. I don't know if I'm willing to go all the way up to make them 9-8. And the questions that I have, agreed. Malik Neighbors is an absolute stud. And I like Tyrone Tracy, and then I like Cam Scattaboo. Like they've got some pieces on this offense that I really like. It's the rest of the pieces that I just feel a little bit. And I agree the defense could have an opportunity to be pretty darn good, but like Darius Slayton and Wan'Dale Robinson Wan'Dale Robinson is fine as a role player, but I would prefer him, I think, if you had another guy out there. Like if it was, your Jameson Williams or something like that, like somebody else as your wide receiver too, that kind of raised the output of the offense. Like I like the combination of Malik and Wan'Dale in terms of how different they are. Darius Slayton, I don't know that I'm excited about the rest of the wide receiver room. And then Theo Johnson, but like I also don't think that they didn't make a move to bring in a really prolific tight end. And so you're essentially looking at like two pieces to the offense that I feel pretty comfortable with. And then you're plugging in Russell Wilson, who's a quarterback that I feel like is an average quarterback at this point in time. Like I think you got to kind of scheme around his weaknesses to a degree as an offensive coordinator. And so I don't know if all of that put together makes me feel like I'm like, yes, Giants.
Well, I guess just to put a line to it.
Stopsky is shaking his head. He hates me. He's going to edit this part out.
The same road to 10 games, to a 10-win season that the Steelers had last year is exactly mirrored by the Giants this year. You're in a tough division, but you're building around two excellent pass rushers, which whether that's Kayvon Thibodeau or whether that's Abdul Carter, we figure Brian Burns, who was one of the best players in pass rush SumerScore last year amongst edge rushers, we figure he'll be that. You have an excellent defensive tackle, Dexter Lawrence, Cam Hayward, and then you add in Russell Wilson. You have one go-to wide receiver in Malik Neighbors. It's like the same kind of formula to 10 games. And I think they can kind of snap up on teams who just aren't ready, aren't good, or aren't young, or aren't veteran teams. I think the Giants can kind of take advantage of them in a way they couldn't last year.
Okay. Fair enough. Let's
Wait, what about you? Wait, who's your team?
Oh yeah, I didn't say one. You're right. I don't actually feel that strongly about any of them, to be honest with you. And I want to call my shot and be like really passionate, but like looking at where teams landed last year and the teams that were even bubble teams, like, okay, so the Cardinals, I think I just made an argument for they were right there on the bubble of being like one more win and they're above 500. And I think that that's certainly possible, but I'm not making a really passionate argument on their behalf because I literally just said I feel like they could turn out to have the exact same record. That's where I actually land on them. I mean, the most obvious is the Niners probably, right? Like at 6-11 last year, that feels anomalous and explainable in a lot of different ways. And so, but that also feels a little bit like a cop-out too. I don't know. I wasn't finding one where I was like, I'm going to call my shot and I feel passionately about this. I mean, a lot of people obviously are putting the Patriots there. I don't think we're, as I said earlier, I don't think we're moving up enough to actually flip it this season. So I guess my answer would be the Niners and then the Cardinals, probably in that order. Going back to my point about the NFC West just being the toughest to call, like in the most just, meshed together.
I think it's interesting because you look at last year and you really look at a couple years back, and there's typically been like 4 or 5 teams that we could pretty much guarantee we're not going to be good. I mean, last year it was the Patriots, the Giants, Raiders, Panthers, Titans. Like, no one felt like those teams are going to win games. This year, there's like a solid core of teams who feel like 8 to 10 win teams, probably starting at the ultra high end. It's like the Chargers 49ers of like teams that could probably progress, but they feel like really good teams, including teams like the Commanders, the Rams, throw the Packers and the Broncos in there as well. And then going down to teams that won last year, but weren't necessarily the greatest teams of all time, the Steelers, the Dolphins. There's this like big glut of 500 teams this year, which there just haven't been in past years. And honestly, I think it's going to make for a really exciting season.
I can't wait till, Thursday and then Friday and then Sunday and then Monday. And we start to get some of these answers. By the way, that's another thing I'm actually looking forward to. I'm looking forward to all of the days being taken over with just a handful of breaks for us. Like NFL is back and I want it on all of the nights. And I'm so excited that we're coming out of the gate super strong in that category. Let's do a Super Bowl prediction here.
Oh, man, the NFC, which did not kill me last year, because last year I was just like Ravens, Lions, Ravens, Lions, Ravens, Lions. Didn't end up being Ravens, Lions, but I've still felt good about that pick, and I'm still going to pick the Ravens once again. I think it's going to be the Ravens. The NFC is such a toss-up. I don't think the Eagles...
Are we doing the whole game or just the winner?
Oh,
I can do the game. I just came with a winner.
Let's do the game, because like that's really... I feel like the juice is really in the game.
Okay.
So sure enough, going Ravens. I don't think we'll see the Eagles get quite to the heights as well. I think there's going to be there has to be some regression in the running back room. If there's not, kudos to the Eagles. They figured out something that we don't know. And I think that there has to be a little bit of regression in the defense, particularly given their struggles at the cornerback position in the preseason, much less in the regular season. Don't think they got that figured out. We'll see what happens. The Lions, I want to pick them again, but it just feels like the tide is turning toward the Green Bay Packers. And so I think I'm going to go with the Green Bay Packers. I think this is the year that Jordan Love, once again, is a top 7 guy in terms of EPA per play for quarterbacks. I think that once again, Matt LaFleur is going to have an excellent offense. And I think the defense is finally going to rise to the occasion, given that they have 2 premier blue chip talents on the front. They have Xavier McKinney and the young Evan Williams on the backside. I think that really negates any questions that they have at the cornerback position. And I think all of that makes sense for a Packers division loss Super Bowl appearance.
Ooh, I like that actually. I like that that path. That makes sense to me. Okay. All right. I'm going to go with I'll start with the NFC because this was not my winner. I'm going to go with the Lions. I think
yeah.
I know. I think that the Eagles are that team. What if we flip it? Like last year, the Lions were so dominant all season long. They're that team that just checked all of the boxes until they got banged up down the stretch. But like I mentioned with their, plus 222, like scoring differential, like they were just in a different, tier than everybody else for much of the season last year. And then the Eagles ended up winning it. I'm going to flip that. I think that the Eagles are probably that team on the NFC right now, the most top to bottom, just all of the things, the front office, the coaching staff, every box is checked. But then weird things happen in the postseason. And I think that the Lions will certainly be in that mix. And I'm just going to continue pushing them to get over that hump. And so I'm going to take the Lions to the Super Bowl, losing to the team that I cannot and will never bet against when it comes to the Super Bowl. And that is the Kansas City Chiefs.
Oh my God.
You can say whatever you want.
God.
Go ahead. This is a team that has been in the Super Bowl for 5 of the last 6 years, including
this would be heartbreaking.
Last year, when all year long we were like, they're not that exciting, they're not that impressive, they're just going to the Super Bowl again. Like it's just gonna happen. I'm sorry. Like, this is the team, and you're a math person, okay? Like, just in terms of odds. If I can tell you a team is pretty much guaranteed a lock in a small period of time, but historically they have established they always get to the AFC Championship game, You have to go without introducing odds or anything like that to this mix. Go, who are you betting on? You have to bet on that team because the odds that they're going to be the team in the Super Bowl with a 50-50 shot, I know that's not how it works, of winning the game, it's them. Like, how do you bet against, how do you pick anyone else?
It's just grim,
they're always
Lindsay.
there.
It's just grim.
I don't know
and
why
I prefer not to do it.
My voice just raised like 3 octaves. I'm like yelling, and let's take it down a notch. I don't know. Plus, is Taylor doing the Super Bowl this year?
Yeah, I was about to say, it's like, I can, oh my God. Look, I love Taylor Swift. I've written 3,000 words about her. That album's going to come out October 3rd. I'm probably going to write 3,000 more words about her. But like, it's just too much.
Let's have a live listening party.
It's just too much. Like, what are they going to do? Like, get married on the 50-yard line in the middle of it? Like, Travis Kelce's going to come out and she's going to, it's a love story, baby, just say. And then they kick the field goal. Harrison Butker makes it. And then Travis Kelce, and they play, and it's just too much. It's just too much.
Actually, I get where people are going with all of the, like, people latched onto, the Swifties latched onto her talking about sourdough on the podcast as a clue. They thought that was an Easter egg. Because she was talking about how she's been making a lot of sourdough in her time. Like, she's making bread. And that's like a San Francisco thing. Like, I've heard that. I'm not saying all Swifties are,
that's a deep cut.
I mean, everything is where Taylor is concerned,
yeah,
right?
That's true.
Like, everything is supposedly thought out. People read into everything that she says or does. And, but I just don't see it happening while he's playing. That doesn't make any sense that she would, while he is,
yeah, that's a good point.
Likely to go to the Super Bowl, she's not going to give herself another job during that game. I don't
100%.
see it happening.
It would.
So
be
there's
cool,
another shot that I'm calling. She does not perform at the Super Bowl.
Are there odds on that? Can we get some odds on that? What is that like? Like, I guess that'd be minus like 450 if I had to make you a market. We got to throw that up on Polymarket, Lindsay.
Do you think that minus 450 is odds that somebody would put up? Like, do those feel like?
No, I guess it would have to be way. Well, I mean, like, how many? It's like, okay, how many people could play the Super Bowl? Okay, well, Kendrick Lamar has already done it. Rihanna has already done it. Drake's not going to do it. So it's like, we're really cutting it down to like Taylor Swift. Right. I don't really know. I wonder if there are actually odds for this. I'd like to. I'd be, as a data person, I'd be very intrigued by how they got to these numbers.
We're gonna go look that up, and then we'll tweet out the odds. Because I too am interested in that. My guess is that they are offshore odds and not at all legal.
Very far offshore.
As our most odds with regards to the halftime show. But whatever the odds are for Taylor Swift, if there's a way to bet against her being the performer, those are the odds that I want. That's what I want to do. All right, this has been fun. And so we will clip this entire thing. Stopsky's going to write down all of our answers, and then we're going to revisit this at the end of the year and see who had the most right answers.